The lamp is low. The rain has paused. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticks past midnight. Welcome to the late reader. Pull the blanket up. Let the dark settle in. Tonight, we read old horror by a single light until sleep finally arrives.
The LED lantern on the folding table threw a white cone of light up into the rafters of the volunteer fire hall, and under it the sheet over Hugh's body looked almost blue. 7 of us sat on metal chairs against the cinder block walls, not talking, just waiting. The medical examiner, a thin man named Corwin, had Hugh's phone in an evidence bag on the table beside him, and he was scrolling through the notes app with a plastic stylus, frowning at the cracked screen every few seconds like he couldn't decide whether what he was reading belonged to the case or to something else entirely.
Through the high windows I could hear the night sounds of the valley, the long yip of a coyote somewhere up the ridge, the dry whir of insects in the sage, the occasional soft cry of an owl. None of us paid attention. The men in the room were ranchers and BLM hands, people who didn't waste interest on things that didn't affect fence lines or cattle. Their faces were weathered and patient. They were waiting for a verdict they could write down and forget.
I was the one who didn't fit. My boots were city boots, broken in just enough to blister. My jacket was the kind you buy at an outdoor store for a weekend trip. I'd been staying with Hugh for 2 weeks, interviewing him for a magazine piece on people who live off-grid. That was the cover, anyway. The truth was that Hugh had called me. He'd sounded careful on the phone, the way people sound when they're trying not to admit they're scared. He'd said, "Come out. I need someone who doesn't know this place."
The side door scraped open and I came in. That's how I remember it. Walking in late with red dust on my boots and the smell of diesel still on my hands from the drive. I'd come 3 hours from the valley to be there. And I'd already filed my article from the parking lot, sitting in my truck with the phone plugged into the charger, rewriting the ending 3 times because the real ending didn't make sense in print. "We waited for you," Corwin said. "Sorry. I was filing my piece."
I felt my face get hot. I wrote it as fiction, because it's not believable as news. But I have a copy on my phone, and I'll swear to it. Corwin studied me for a moment, then tapped the phone screen with the stylus. "Before we begin, I'd like to read something from the deceased's notes. October 7th. The eye is a cheap instrument. It only catches a few octaves of the real scale. And God help me, the thing is that color." He looked at me. "Does this mean anything to you, Mr. Harker?"
The others took off their hats. I was sworn in. Corwin asked my name, age, occupation. I told him I was 27, a freelance writer, and that I'd been staying at Hugh's place to interview him for a profile. Part of the reason was professional. Hugh was a good character, a former surveyor who dropped out and built a cabin on 40 acres of BLM lease. Part of it was that he'd asked me to come. He'd said he needed someone with a level head. "Tell us what happened," Corwin said.
I pulled out my notebook and found the page. My hands were steady, which surprised me. They hadn't been steady in 2 days.
"We left the cabin before sunrise. Hugh wanted to check the trail cameras he'd set up along the ridge, and I went along to help carry gear, and because I couldn't sleep anyway. The cabin had been creaking all night in a wind I couldn't feel, and every time I dozed off, I heard Hugh moving in the other room, walking from window to window. Once, around 2 in the morning, I'd heard him whispering to himself on the porch. When I asked about it at breakfast, he just shook his head and poured more coffee.
It was the kind of morning that makes you think the world is empty except for you and the dirt under your boots. The sky was just starting to go gray, and the air smelled like sage and cold stone. We didn't talk much. Hugh moved ahead of me on the trail with the quick, quiet steps of someone who knows every rock and bend. He was 52, lean, with the permanent tan of a man who'd spent his life outside. He wore an old cap pulled low and carried his grandfather's shotgun like an extension of his arm.
We followed an old jeep track up through the chaparral and came out onto a wide bench covered in cheatgrass. Hugh stopped a few yards ahead of me and went still. I almost walked into his back. I heard it then, a thrashing in the brush to our right, maybe 40 yards off. Something heavy moving fast, breaking branches that sounded too thick for a deer. "Deer," I said. "Or maybe an elk."
Hugh didn't answer. He'd unslung his shotgun and cocked it, and he was staring at the brush with a kind of focus I'd never seen in him before. Hugh was usually the calmest person I knew. He'd worked survey crews in Alaska and spent 2 winters alone in that cabin. Nothing rattled him. Now the barrel of his gun tracked back and forth in tiny movements, like he was following something he could see but I couldn't. "Hugh," I said. It's not worth buckshot. If it's an elk, you'll just piss it off.
He turned his head just enough for me to see his face, and in that gray light he looked white. Actually white. His lips were pressed together so hard they'd gone pale. Then I understood that whatever was in the brush wasn't an elk. It wasn't anything I'd seen before, or at least it wasn't anything Hugh had a name for. I moved up beside him and worked the action on my own shotgun. The thrashing stopped. For a few seconds there was nothing but the wind moving through the dry grass. Then I saw the grass move.
I can't describe it properly. There was no animal visible, no body, no outline against the sky. But the cheatgrass was being pressed down in a long, narrow path, as if something heavy and low was sliding through it. The path bent toward us at a walking pace, perfectly straight, and the grass didn't spring back up the way it would under wind. It stayed crushed. It stayed dead.
I should have been terrified. I know that now. But at the time I felt something closer to vertigo. The way you feel when you look at one of those optical illusions too long, and your eyes stop trusting the room. Once, as a kid, I looked out a window, and for just a second mistook a small bush near the glass for a tree far away. The bush was too sharp, too solid, too wrong for its place in the depth of things. It frightened me more than any monster movie ever had. That's what this was like. The world had made a mistake, and my eyes couldn't correct it.
What is it? I asked. My voice came out rough. Hugh, what the hell is it? He didn't look at me. That damned thing, he said. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been shouting in a dream. The path in the grass kept coming. Hugh raised the shotgun and fired both barrels into the grass. The sound was enormous in that open space. The smoke hung in the air for a half second, thick and white, and then something hit me. I didn't see it. I only felt a soft, heavy mass slam into my chest and throw me backward. My shotgun went flying. I landed hard and couldn't get my breath.
Before I could sit up, I heard Hugh scream. It wasn't a human sound. I mean, it came from a human throat, but it had something else underneath it. Something raw and tearing, like a dogfight amplified. I forced myself onto my knees and saw him 30 feet away, down on one knee, his head wrenched back at an angle that looked wrong, his hat gone, his hair wild. His right arm was lifted, but I couldn't see his hand. His whole body jerked side to side, back and forth, like he was wrestling with someone twice his size. And parts of him kept disappearing.
I don't know how else to put it. One second I could see his left shoulder and arm, and the next it was as if something opaque had moved between us, not blocking my view but erasing it. Then he'd shift, and the missing parts would come back. It was like watching a photograph glitch. I ran toward him. I don't know what I thought I could do. Maybe I thought he was having a seizure. Maybe I thought I could pull him free. My own gun was somewhere in the grass behind me, and I didn't stop for it.
For a few seconds that felt much longer. I watched Hugh fight something I couldn't see. He cursed and struck out with his elbows and knees. His body twisted in ways that didn't look voluntary. I heard him grunt, heard the breath driven out of him, heard a sound like fabric tearing that I realized too late was skin. Then he went down.
By the time I reached him, he was on the ground and quiet. All the sounds had stopped. The only movement was in the grass, a long, crushed trail leading from Hugh's body toward the juniper line at the edge of the bench. I watched it go until it reached the trees. Only then could I make myself look down. Hugh was dead. I stopped reading. The fire hall was silent. One of the jurors, an old rancher, cleared his throat.
Corwin stood and walked to the table. He folded the sheet back from Hugh's body, and the LED light made the bruises look almost black against his pale skin. The chest and sides were mottled with contusions the size of fists. There were lacerations across his ribs where the skin had been torn in ragged strips. 5 of them, parallel, spaced like fingers. Corwin said nothing, but I saw him measure the spacing with his eyes, and I saw him decide not to mention it. His throat, Corwin had covered it with a gauze wrap, and when he removed it, 2 of the jurors turned away.
I went to the open door and stood there breathing cold air until the spinning stopped. Corwin held up Hugh's clothes one by one, torn, stiff with blood. The jurors didn't look closely. They'd seen trauma before, ranch accidents, vehicle rollovers, a mauling 2 summers back. What was new to them was my statement. If there's nothing further, Corwin said, you may retire to consider your verdict. The foreman stood. He was a tall man in a canvas jacket, maybe 60, with sunburned skin and the careful posture of someone who'd spent his life on horseback.
I got one question, he said. Which hospital did this last witness here escape from? Corwin looked at me with something like sympathy. Mr. Harker, would you care to answer? I didn't. The 7 jurors filed out. When they came back, the foreman wrote on a notepad, "We find the deceased came to his death by a bear attack, but some of us think he may also have had a medical event." I was free to go. As I left, I stopped at the door. "The phone you've got there, Hugh's notes. Can I see them?"
The notes were made before his death, Corwin said. They don't figure into the finding, and he slipped the evidence bag into his coat pocket. Later, I got copies. The original police report was public record, and Hugh's sister mailed me the password to his cloud backup. The entries that mattered were these: date missing, top of file corrupted.
Would run in a half circle, keeping his head turned toward the center, barking like I'd never heard. Then he bolted into the brush and didn't come back. I found him at the cabin an hour later, cowering under the porch. Not hurt, just scared. I thought he'd gone rabid, but his eyes were clear. He was looking at something behind me. Can a dog see with his nose? Can smell create a picture in the brain?
Sep 2. Watched the stars come up over the east ridge last night. One by one, along the crest, they winked out, left to right, only a few at a time, only for an instant, but the whole length of the ridge. Something passed between me and them. I couldn't see it. The stars weren't close enough together to show its shape. I don't like this. Sep 4. Found more sign this morning. A line of crushed grass across the north pasture, straight as a survey line. No tracks in the dust. Whatever it is, it doesn't leave prints. It leaves absence.
Sep 10. Woke at 3 a.m. to the dog barking. Not the alert bark, the other one. The one that means run. I stood on the porch with the flashlight and saw nothing. But the cheatgrass was moving in a long curve around the cabin, like something was pacing the walls. I went back inside and didn't sleep. In the morning, the grass was still flat. Sep 15. I tried to record it. Set up the trail cam on the north fence. Next morning, the camera was on the ground. Lens cracked. Memory card missing. The strap wasn't chewed. It was pulled apart.
Sep 2. Last night, I heard it breathing. I know how that sounds, but I heard it. A low, slow sound. Lower than anything I can describe. It didn't come from outside. It came from everywhere, like the air itself was drawing breath. I sat in the corner with the shotgun across my knees until morning. 3 weeks missing.
Sep 1 set. It's been around again. I find sign every morning, crushed grass, scraped bark, places where the dust has been pressed smooth. I sat up all last night in the blind with the 12-gauge loaded with slugs. In the morning the sign was fresh, 20 feet from where I'd been sitting. I don't think I slept. I don't sleep anymore. If this is real, I'm going mad. If it isn't, I already am. Oct 3. I'm not leaving. It's my place, my land. I won't be run out.
Oct 7. I figured it out. Last night it came to me all at once, the way bad news does. There are sounds we can't hear. At the top and bottom of the scale, notes too high or too low for the human ear. I've watched blackbirds fill a treetop, all singing, and then every one of them launches at the exact same instant. They can't all see each other. There must be a signal, a note above what I can hear. Whales do it too. Miles apart, over the curve of the ocean, diving together. The sailor doesn't hear it, but the hull feels it.
Color works the same way. Past violet and past red, there are wavelengths the eye can't process. The eye is a cheap instrument. It only catches a few octaves of the real scale. And God help me, the thing is that color tense of Oct 9, it knows I'm watching now. It doesn't hide as much. Oct 10. Will arrives tomorrow. I don't know if I brought him here to help me or to prove I'm sane. Either way, I don't want to be alone with it anymore.
I closed the file when I reached that line. Outside, the valley has gone dark, and my laptop screen is the only light in the room. I stand up and walk to the window. Across the street, the neighbor's dog is standing in his yard, perfectly still, staring at something in the empty air above the fence. He's been there for 10 minutes. He hasn't barked once. I turn away from the window. On the kitchen counter, my phone buzzes with a notification from the trail camera I left at Hugh's place. The cabin is 200 miles away. I pick it up and open the app.
The image is black and white, timestamp 2:47 a.m. The camera points at the north pasture. The grass is moving in a long, straight line toward the cabin. There's nothing else in the frame. I set the phone down face first on the counter. A minute later it buzzes again. Another image, same camera. Timestamp 2:51 a.m. I don't pick it up. I already know what it will show. Across the street, the neighbor's dog whines once, low in his throat. Then he lies down and covers his nose with his paws.
I don't look at the window. I don't look at the phone. I sit in the dark and listen to the house make no sound at all.
The story closes here, but the quiet does not. Another night waits on the shelf, its pages already yellowing. When the light is low again, we will return. For now, let the window hold the dark. Let the mirror hold only you. Sleep well, late reader.